now, and we're looking at some of the miracles that he has performed. And the last week we talked about the calming of the seas and the calming of the storm. We looked at how Christ has that same effect in our lives and how he calms us. And last week was the first week that we actually tried video here at the church, and we uploaded it to YouTube. And it had like 60 complete views. And I know that 59 of those were mine, so for the other person that watched the 60th one, thank you. That was Amanda. But it went really well, so hopefully, if you're not here, look on YouTube and look on the Facebook page and look on the website, and those videos are up there, and you can catch up and know what we're talking about here. And if you're sleepy and you can't sleep, just turn it on at night and listen to it, right? All right, enough of that. So, this morning, I want to talk about enough. I want to talk about happiness. I want to talk about our lives today and our culture in this country. And I see something created every day in the lives of people, and not just us. You know, I'm not focusing this necessarily on us, but more at our culture as American society, as the American dream, as we look at that. And the realization is, when is enough? Enough. And exactly what is enough? And that's something that I think our culture has a really hard time figuring out. You know, what is enough? It's always the next thing and the next thing, and this is going to make me happy, and then that's going to make me happy, and then now I want this, and this will make me happy. But the question is what's enough? And unfortunately, you see this impact a lot of people's lives negatively. We're constantly searching for the next thing. What we have is just never good enough. We're just not happy with it. We just want more and more. And this continues. It's an everyday struggle. It's an everyday struggle in my life. I'm a car guy, and that's a nervous laugh on the front row, because I start talking about cars and she gets nervous. And because I like cars, I love cars, and I'm a Dodge guy, I'm a Mopar guy. I love the Hemi engine. I like, the Challengers and the Chargers. I mean, you're talking, if you get an SRT8, it has a 6.2 liter Hemi engine, 470 horsepower, 470 foot of torque. I mean, it'll go fast, and I love that stuff. And it's wide ranging. I mean, I'm not just a Dodge guy. I'm a Chevy guy, and I'm a Ford guy, and I'm a Mercedes guy, and I'm an Audi guy, and I'm a Ferrari guy, and a Bugatti guy. I like Bugattis too. Anybody ever seen a Bugatti? You have? Yeah. The Bugattis are nice, let me tell you. There's this car called a Bugatti Veyron, okay? Now, the Bugatti Veyron is a pretty interesting car. The Bugatti Veyron 16.4. Now listen to some of the specifics on it. It's a masterpiece, this is how they claim it. It is a masterpiece of crafted carbon fiber and aluminum, all right? Now this thing has an 8-liter turbo engine in it. And it just doesn't have a turbo engine. It doesn't have a dual turbo engine. It has a quad turbo engine. This is an engine, 8 liters, that has 4 turbochargers on it. It produces over 1,000 horsepower and will run over 200 miles an hour. And it costs $1.9 million. And people drive this car down the street. Can you imagine driving a Bugatti Veyron through Portsmouth? I can see myself driving now. And that's kind of the thing in myself. It's when is enough? Enough. It's always that next thing. There's always a car that's going to go faster. Always. Next year's model, the 2015 Bugatti Veyron, is going to be 1,200 horse, and it's going to travel over 250 miles an hour. And then you're like, oh, I got to have that. Let's drop another $2 million on this, and and my 8 miles per gallon, and let's see what we can do. But that is our culture, isn't it? That's who I am, and I think if you sit down and you watch a TV and the commercials on the TV, it's always the next thing. It's always the next year. You know, the iPhones. As you know, I like my technology as well, and it's like the next thing. It's like, oh, I gotta have it. Unfortunately, I got help, and I'm on a plan now, so I get one every 2 years, and not every year. But that's just the way we are. It's built into us. And we have a really bad perspective. When I talk about perspective, I talk about culture a lot, because Americans have a poor perspective in comparison to the rest of the world. And we usually talk about statistics, and one of the statistics that I like is the rest of the world lives on an average about $1 to $2 a day. And when you use our culture in a comparison to that, we spend about 50% of what it takes for most of the world to live on for a month. We spend about 50% of that in a month on trash bags to contain the stuff that we throw away. When Americans are asked what is rich, it always varies. It's a different number every time, but it's always the same answer, believe it or not. Nobody's ever rich. Do you know that? You ask a rich person, are you rich? And I'm like, no. Well, what's rich? It's always twice the number of what they have. That's always considered what rich is. And that's the way we are. Are you rich? No. But this guy has twice as much as I am. He's rich, and that's what I want. So it continues and continues and continues. Our culture and the way we live, you know, our poorest here in this country live like kings in comparison to the rest of the world, living on $1 a day. So our outlook is kind of viewed on that. But this morning, I want to talk about enough. And just exactly what is enough. And in this bag is enough. We're going to talk about that. But first, let's turn to the Bible. And that's what we look at this. We're looking in this whole series. We have questions about life. We have questions about the way we should be. We have challenges. We have struggles in our lives. And we want to look to the Bible, and we want to ask, in the life of Christ, the things that he's done, what he has showed us as it applies to our life every day, and as it applies to us spiritually. So we look to the book of John, chapter 6 this morning, in verses 1 through 14. And we are looking at the feeding of the 5,000. So you can follow along with me this morning if you want. I'll be in the NASB. After these things, Jesus went away to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, or Tiberias. A large crowd followed him because they saw the signs which he was performing on those who were sick. Then Jesus went up on the mountain, and there he sat down with his disciples. And now the Passover, the feast of the Jews, was near. Therefore Jesus, lifting up his eyes and seeing that a large crowd was coming to him, he said to Philip, "Where are we to buy bread so that these may eat?" This he was saying to test him, for he himself knew what he was intending for them. For everyone, to do what he was intending to do. Philip answered him, 200 denarii worth of bread is not sufficient for them, for everyone, even to receive a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, there is a lad here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what are these for so many people? Jesus said, have the people sit down. And now there was much grass in the place, so the men sat down in number about 5,000. Jesus then took the loaves, and having given thanks, he distributed to those who were seated. Likewise also of the fish, as much as they wanted. When they were filled, he said to his disciples, gather up the leftover fragments so that nothing will be lost. So they gathered them up and filled 12 baskets with fragments from the barley loaves, which were left over by those who had eaten. Therefore, when the people saw the sign which he had performed, they said, this is truly the prophet who is to come into the world. I love this passage of Scripture. I love the description of this miracle that took place. And there's a couple of things that we have to understand here to really set the scene and to break out of our culture as we talk about it and to look at what's taking place here. And now we're talking about Jesus with his disciples, and he looks up and he sees this huge crowd forming, right? And it describes that there's 5,000 men. Now, to understand this completely, you have to realize that biblical writers in this day did not count women and children amongst the numbers. So there were 5,000 men plus women and children. So there's easily 15,000, 20,000 people that are here. So now the conversation is that they've been out here, he's been teaching, all these people are out here, they're a long ways from town, there's no food to be found, and Christ asked the disciples, he says, what are we going to feed them? And they survey around and look at the crowd and they're like, wow, we just don't have enough money to feed all these people. If we were to feed these people, it would take about 8 months worth of salary to feed them. And we just don't have that. And Jesus says, have the people sit down. And they come up and they tell him that they found this boy, and this boy has 5 loaves of bread and 2 fishes. So here we are. So 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, right? Tuna. I'm not packing fish around in my pocket. It's 2014. It comes in a can now. So, we have 5 loaves of fish, or 5 loaves of bread, 2 small fish. And then they shake down a young boy to get this. And still they're like, but Jesus, what is this in comparison? I mean, have you seen this crowd of people? There's 20,000 people. And I imagine they're hungry. They've been out here in the heat of this desert, out here by the sea. They've been out here all day. And they're hungry. And what is this in comparison? And I think about this often. And we actually got to see this illustration a few weeks ago. I just loved it. And I thought one day I'm going to use that illustration. And then it happened to be in our series. So I thought this is the perfect time. And you think about a young boy, okay, that brings these 5 loaves of bread. 20,000 people. There's one boy there. And that one boy has 5 loaves of bread and 2 small fishes on him. So let's think about this, okay? How did this young boy end up with 5 loaves of bread and 2 small fishes? And why is he the only one here that has any food? And think about the disciples. You know, they're walking around scratching their head. Like 20,000 people. I'm going to feed 20,000 people. That's a ton of money we don't have. And they come across this boy. He's like, man, let's get some bread. Give me that bread. You know, and they're taking his bread and they keep walking around. They take his fish, and I'm sure he's giving it up to him. He really don't want to. And so they take it back and they present it to Jesus. This is what we have. Out of all these people, this is what we have. But you're thinking about that one boy, and then I often like to wonder, what was his name? And you know it's probably like Little Johnny, right? and you know that his parents came to Little Johnny early in the morning. They're like, hey, Johnny, today we're going to go out by the sea, and we're going to listen to this great prophet speak. And Little Johnny's like, Mom, Dad, how long are we going to be gone? Well, we don't know. Little Johnny's like, I'm going to get hungry. So little Johnny goes to the kitchen and he's like, more. How long is this going to take? We don't know, but probably several hours. He's like, I need to get more. Fish. Whew. I think this will be enough. I might get hungry. I don't know how long we're going to be out there, but I'm going to make sure I got enough. I'm not going to go hungry while we're out there, right? So he's got full, and things are kind of sticking out. He's just sticking stuff everywhere. Hold on, I'm not getting hungry. You know, he knows what enough is, right? So he's got these 5 loaves of bread, and he's got these 2 fish, and I'm sure his weren't in a can, and they're probably smoked, hopefully, because it's hot out there, and they probably cook in his back pocket in 120-degree weather out in the desert. So here he is, he's walking around, and I'm sure his parents are looking at him like, what do you have in your pockets? I don't have nothing in my pockets, He's like, I'm keeping this for myself. I'm going to get hungry. I don't know what you're going to eat, but I'm going to eat well. I have more than enough in my pockets to take care of me. And then here he is in the crowd, and the disciples are looking for food. His belly's a little hungry, and he's thinking, I've got 5 loaves of bread and a couple of fish. I'm pretty good. And the disciples come up, and they're like, what do you got? Bread. You can have my loaf of bread. There's more in your pockets. And he's like, all right, there's 2 loaves of bread. And he's like, give me a little bit more here. No, this is it. Let's see what else you got. And another loaf of bread. And he pulls out. Can you imagine seeing this kid packing 5 loaves of bread? He's pulling it out. All right. There it is. It's 5 loaves of bread. Something smells. Give it up. Oh. So here we are. I put those in a bag just for the effect. I'm sorry. So here we have 20,000 people, 5 loaves of bread, and 2 fish. The significance about this is the little boy, he knew what was enough, didn't he? He knew that what the day would take, and he prepared for it. And I'm sure he was pretty happy, walking around with his 5 loaves of bread and his 2 fish. He was happy with what he had for that day. So he was satisfied. He was pleased. He was content. And then the disciples come along and they bring it to Jesus. And you think, I just can't imagine. They've seen him do some wonderful things, but I still can't imagine their mindset. They're like 20,000 people and, 5 loaves of bread and 2 small fish. So here they are. Here, this is what we got. And now, what do you want to do with this? And Jesus comes up and he says, 5 loaves of bread, 2 fish. He's quiet. See the people. He says, Father, good news. It's enough. And he picks up the bread. And he breaks the bread. And they start handing it out. And they go around to every person. He keeps breaking the bread. He hands it out. And every person there that day eats. And they're satisfied. And the fish, he's handing out the fish. And in a crowd so large, 20,000 people, they're satisfied. And it says that they have more than enough. So the miracle is that he takes five loaves of bread, like this, 5 loaves of bread and 2 small fish, and he breaks it up and he feeds 20,000 people to the point that they are more than full. And then he tells the disciples, he says, go around and gather all that is left over and put it in baskets. And we see that this is just a substantial amount that was left over that far outweighs 5 loaves of bread and 2 small fish. And you're in this crowd and you're seeing this. And it says, surely they knew that this was the Son of God, that he was the long prophesied Messiah, the Christ. And they were blown away. The boy's like, he took my bread, he did my fish. But he did something great with what little that boy had. And it was enough it was enough to feed 20,000 people. Now, that is just miraculous by any standard to think. And we often look at this, and I just don't think, like Dave said earlier, that the gravity of it really sets in for us. We really don't understand this because our minds and the culture we live in, we are driven for something far beyond being satisfied. And for us, I think that there's a couple of lessons that we take away from this. And first and foremost, in our personal lives, we answer that question, what is enough? What is enough? When is enough enough? And I think this young boy that pulls out these 5 loaves of bread and these two fish, I think he's a good example of that. He knew what enough was, right? He brought enough to the party. He knew what it took, right? He knew that, and I imagine he was satisfied with that. And he probably even stuck a little extra in his pockets, you know. He got that fifth loaf in his back pocket. He had just enough room. He's like, I got it in there. But he knew what enough was. And that's our first lesson today, as it applies to our lives in this world, in this country. We have to determine exactly what is enough for us. And we need to be satisfied in that. We need to look at one another. We need to look at our wives. We need to look at our children. We need to look at our futures. And we have to answer that question. We have to answer the question, what is enough? And we have to learn to be satisfied with exactly just that, enough. We're so blessed in this country. We are so blessed to have all that we have in comparison to the rest of the world, in comparison to the people that are really starving in third world countries. We are so blessed, and we need to realize as Americans that we have more than enough. And it's time to be satisfied, and it's time to be thankful. It's time to understand that we are rich in this country, and we need to just choose for ourselves what is enough. And as Christians, and even if you're not a Christian, what you have in excess, help those around you. Enrich the lives of those around you with what is more than enough, the excess that you have. And I don't know what enough is for your life. I think for me, a Bugatti Veyron is more than enough. I should probably stay away from that. I'm a public servant, and I'm never going to drive one, so never afford one. But that's it. We have to determine for our lives. And we've got to come to a place to where we're like this young man, to where we say, this is enough. And we need to change that mindset in ourselves. We need to have that shift in our lives that says, okay, I can live with this. I'm happy with this. And we do this in every aspect of our lives, don't we? It's not just money. It's not just stuff. It's positions and jobs and titles and constantly we want the next thing. We want the next thing. And I fortunately am in a place in my professional career that I'm happy where I'm at. I have no desire to advance beyond that. But I know what is enough, and I know what I want there. And the position that I am in gives me that. It answers the question, what is enough? And I'm in a position to where I can affect as many lives, I believe, as possible in what I do. And I have the perfect position for that. And I think that's how we have to look at our lives as Christians. We need to ask, what is enough for me in my life where God has placed me at? What is enough for me to effectively bring positive energy and make a difference in the lives of the people around me? What is enough? And we all have to answer that for ourselves. We have to make that decision. In our house, we've made some tough decisions like that recently. But that's what we have to do, folks. Quit striving for the next thing. Find out what is enough and achieve it and be satisfied with that. Like this young boy. Be satisfied. I got my bread. I got my fish. I'm good. Get your bread. get your fish, and adopt the same understanding. And spiritually, when we move into this, we look, there's always an application for today, and more than one or two usually. We try to focus on one. And that application today is determine what is enough and be satisfied in enough. And use the excess of money, stuff, titles, whatever. Use it to enrich the lives and make a positive effect on your community and this world around you. Live that Christian life. Live that example of the love of Jesus Christ and just desire that. Desire to change this world, change the people around you in a positive way with who you are and what you have. Because what you have in this country, I guarantee you, is more than enough. And as we move to the spiritual side of this, and we realize that when Jesus taught, it wasn't just an application of life. It is that. But he would take that application of the life. He would take that enriching factor of the life, something present that we could see, something present that we could understand. And we know that when he gave these principles out, these biblical principles that had been given, we know that they always work. You can always achieve enough. There is always a sufficient amount for you. He will provide that. He tells us, he said, I clothe the lilies. Look at the lilies and how they are. I take care of the lilies. Do you not think that I'm not going to take care of you? You're my most prized creation. I will take care of you. And we have to know is right. Why do I continue to do what is wrong? And we have to come to a place to we understand exactly what Jesus Christ is telling us here. And he is telling us that he is sufficient for our lives. He is sufficient for our everyday application, the food that we eat, the oxygen that we breathe. He is sufficient and he will provide. But he is also telling us that all that baggage, all that past, all that sin that we carry in our lives, he is saying that I am more than sufficient to take care of that. And the message to us is quit living in defeat. You see, because in his sufficiency, he has won the victory. And because we believe in him, because we trust him, because we know that he is risen from the dead, that he died on the cross, that he provides salvation for us, that he is more than sufficient, because we believe this, we take part in that victory. And as Christians, we live from victory. We don't live from defeat. So we shouldn't be walking around so broken and so